Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Open Money where we feature real people talking about their real personal financial journeys. On this episode, we're talking with Brian, and Brian is kind of in the messy middle of things. He's saving for his retirement, saving for his kids' college, and his wife has started a brand new business.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm from southeastern Pennsylvania, and I'm 45 years old.
Well, welcome to the channel. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Erin, for having me. I enjoy these segments, and I just thought it would be interesting to be a part of it.
Honestly, I enjoy these videos more than any of my other videos. I think they're just far more fun.
Yeah, I found the ones that I've watched fascinating, so I wanted to be a part and see if any of my story can help others. I'd gladly share it.
Awesome. You want to start out with what your numbers look like?
Sure. We have approximately $1,150,000 in total assets, which is broken out with approximately 580,000 of that is in retirement. I then have a brokerage account that's taxable with about $60,000 in it. I currently have 110,000 in savings, which is higher than what I normally have because we are in the process of adding on to our house. We're building a garage, an extra garage and a workshop for my wife as part of my house, and which part of that money needs to be used to pay for the building as it's continuing to go. When I do my net worth statement, I use my home at its purchase price. So we purchased it for right around $285,000. And then within that small business that my wife has, we have about $30,000 in, she has about $30,000 in assets currently. And then I have about, I would say it may actually be able to sell for more than that because I know that racing trailers at the moment are hard to find. So but my son go-kart races, so I'll say that I have $5,000 in racing assets. That's like a conservative number.
Yeah.
Within tools, his go-kart and the trailer we use to pull it, and then we have $80,000 approximately in 529 accounts to account for both of my children's college education. So those are my assets. Our liabilities, the only liability that we have is we have our mortgage on our house, which again, we just refinanced. We refinanced it in order to build the garage.
Yeah.
So it was a it's now $224,000. But it was all the way down to 90. It's basically it's like $140,000 garage we're building because it's not only a garage, but it's going to have solar panels on it. Starting my own electric company.
I was like, that's a pretty epic garage there.
Yeah, well, it's 2 floors. It's going to have a second floor, and then the solar panels are going to be ones that I actually own. I don't know if that's a good or bad decision, but that's what I'm doing. So I'm paying for those. So it ended up being like 100. I think it's 130. I think it was $135,000 garage. So that changed. We basically did a refinance in order to pull that out. And then so that would put my net worth right around $925,000.
Hey, honing in on that $1 million status.
Yeah, we're right there. And again, if you go in and you look at if you go into look at the Zestimate on my house, that says it says it's 400,000. I don't know if it really is or not, but so technically we're like right there. And so within my brokerage account, I have a couple little stocks, like one's a small medical device company, another one's like they do advertising for apps that I feel are like things that will take off.
Sure.
And they did take off, but now with
2022 has not been friendly to stocks.
Yeah, they it's actually funny because the medical device company, I bought it for like $2 a share. It went all the way up to 10, and I thought about selling it and then didn't sell it, and now it's down to $1.90. So it's like,
well, maybe it'll go back.
it's in a developmental stage of the company. So I think eventually, if they do everything they're supposed to, it will go back.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that you're like, oh darn.
It's not fun to watch the money go down, not at all.
Yeah, no, but it's all right. It's not money that I don't have money in there that I feel if I lose it, it's going to hurt us. So
Yeah.
it's not that much. It's not a lot, but it was one of those things. There was a day last year that I was over $1 million easily, but not anymore.
I feel like everyone, when they get to that $1 million point, at some point the market just tricks you and you fall back down. You're like, here's your teaser of when you hit it, and then you'll actually hit it a little bit later.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. And from your videos and other people's videos, and just from being so I'm an accountant. I don't know if I really went over that earlier. Being an accountant, I like to read financial information.
Yeah.
So when you read stuff and it's like, oh, well, use 6 or 8% or 10% as your rate of return. Like, so when I sit there and look at what I've got invested at the moment and just, map out where that 6 and 8% would go.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't, it's obviously doesn't happen like that every year, but you can see where the money will go over time. That I'm not really, there's no concern. I don't have any concerns on when the $1 million comes versus, because I know it will come at some point. So yeah,
I like to run different numbers as well, because like I'll do the 6 and the 8%, but every once in a while I'm like, let's just throw in 10, just in case it happens.
Yeah. So that's basically what my numbers are. So I'm not, I feel like we're in a really good spot.
Yeah.
Financially, in order to have a nice future.
Yeah, I think so too. So how'd you get into accounting? That's a very finance-driven field.
So for accounting, I actually in high school, I took the accounting class in high school. And I got a 98 in the first quarter. And I remember this. Yeah, so I got a 98 in the first quarter. That was my lowest grade in the class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had 100 in the third and fourth quarter, and I think I had a 99 in the second. So it was one of those things that in high school, and I took it as a junior. I was like, oh well, this seems like I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm a math person, so it's one of those things that like math has always come easy to me. So I thought, oh, all right, I can do this. And if I had a passion, I was also the PA announcer for our basketball games. So like, that was like my other passion, was just like, like being maybe on the radio or something like that. But when I did the research on both of those careers for college, in communications, you had to take all these extra English and literature and writing classes. And I was like, well, I'm not good at that. So I'm going to go this accounting route, because that's numbers. I can do that. So that's how I ended up choosing accounting. It was because of, I was lucky enough to be exposed to it in high school and enjoyed it enough that I thought, hey, I can do this.
Do you think being exposed to accounting and money issues at a younger age helped you out in learning to invest and things like that?
I believe it did. But I actually will say, if I go back and give credit to anyone, my parents always lived below their means. And they kind of taught me to live below their means. One of my favorite stories to tell people is just to understand who my mom is if I would ever go grocery shopping with her as a child, I understood that if I could get anything, like she would let me buy things. So if I wanted like Fruity Pebbles or Lucky Charms or Oreo cookies or whatever, there was always a caveat that came to that. The first question was always, is it on sale? And then the second thing was, she was a coupon person. So she had, a Tupperware container, which was probably like 8 by 12 inch box that had all these envelopes of coupons in. So I knew if it was on sale, and then that she would hand me an envelope or two that had coupons in, that I would have to flip through and find a coupon for whatever product it was that I wanted to buy. If there was a coupon that was not expired, I was allowed to buy that item.
Perfect.
So it was one of those things. She always kind of helped the budget go by clipping coupons. So that rubbed off on me. Now I will say I don't spend nearly the amount of time that she did on coupons. And nowadays it's even better, because now you can go into the grocery store app and click
I
the
was gonna say
coupon.
that's what I do. Like I put things in my cart and it's like, oh, this has a coupon. I'm like, click.
Right. So that helps out tremendously, rather than standing there with an envelope and flipping through, or looking in the in the thing from the paper and cutting them out. So it was basically my mom on the savings side, and then my dad on the basically was a person who sat me down and kind of was like, hey, you put money away early for later on in life. And my dad did some weird things. I don't know, they're weird. Some interesting things. Like my father saved all his change. And I actually picked this up from him. I actually should have brought one over before we started. I should have brought it over. I've saved like all my change my whole entire life. I've never spent my change. And what my dad did with it is, for his 25th wedding anniversary, he actually paid for a trip to Hawaii. He wrapped up all the change that he had. Took it to the bank and cashed it in, and it actually paid for a trip to Hawaii.
That's incredible. How long was that change jar going?
I think his whole life. I'm pretty sure it was like his whole life. Like he actually had, like, and I do. I have an apple juice container, like a 1 gallon glass bottle of apple juice that is completely filled with dimes. Like I have no idea how much money's in that, because dimes are little, and and it's a full container full of dimes. And my dad had multiples of those with pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters. And he sat there, and it was funny because I was making fun of him, because he was making me help him. Because at the time I was, I don't know, I was like a early teenager. We were sitting there at the dining room table, like counting out pennies and quarters and nickels, and wrapping them up, and then setting them aside so that he could take them to the bank in order to cash them in. But I think I didn't get how much of the trip it paid for, but I know that the change paid for a lot of the trip to Hawaii, which is pretty impressive.
That's the best. And just a side note, I used to love wrapping coins. That used to be so relaxing, but now I don't have any coins to wrap.
Yeah, I still have and again, it's funny because that's kind of where I went away from it, because I don't carry money anymore. Everything for me, I just swipe a card. And oh well. So I know I'm not paying for a trip to Hawaii with mine, but mine's worth something, and
you can do something with it.
And I'm sure people are probably sitting there like, oh, you could be earning interest on that money. And yeah, you're right, I could be, but at the same time, it's a cool little game that I watch my dad do, that I'm gonna it's saved for a rainy day. So
well, I think that's kind of one of the best lessons parents can give their kids, to live below your means, because that's kind of where finance starts, because if you're spending more than you make, you're never going to get ahead.
Correct. So, and then that's also something you learn as an accountant. So as an accountant, you sit there and you try and balance the books. So if you can see when you're spending more than what you're making, those businesses don't work out. So that's kind of the other thing for a personal, that transfers over to the personal finance too. If you're spending more than you're making, there's a problem.
Yes, that lifestyle's not going to work out too well.
That's correct. So it's really, my parents are really kind of what set me up, along with and then they helped me push me into accounting, because they're like, hey, you're good at it, go do it. And then the other person who really influenced me is, I have my older brother. My older brother is also, he's a really savvy, again, he came from my parents also. So he's got the same mindset. So he's a live below your means person. He's done extremely well for himself. He's a really smart guy. And he's about he's much older than me. So it's one of those things that since he's 8 years older than me, I've been able to kind of watch what he does and learn from him. And, I've learned from some of his mistakes. And while I was in college, right when I got out of college, he actually started an investment club. And there were about, I don't know how many we had in it at its height. I want to say there were 20 people or so in this investment club that he started. And we met monthly, and we all threw, I don't remember, it was $30. It was either $25 or $30 a month that we would throw into this club. And then we would actually discuss different stocks. And we actually would then, we as a club, we bought, we had Disney, Intel, Home Depot, those, Checkpoint software. Those were some of our winners. We also bought Boston Market, which went belly up. So there were some things that I learned from being in that investment club. And that was literally when I was 22, 23 years old. I joined his investment club. So it was, that also helped me with my experience, with finance. And that got me really intrigued in the stock market itself, because we'd had learning segments where people would get up and say, they talk about different aspects of a stock and, what its return on investment, what the company's ROI is, what the price to sales are, what, all the ratios we would talk through. And that's something that got me interested anyway, at least in definitely in stocks.
I had an investment club that I was part of when I was in college, and it was the most fun thing. So I think that's a huge leg up to be able to have access to something like that.
Yeah, it really was. And we had some really neat people, because I think my brother started it with a couple of the people that he got his MBA with.
Yeah.
So they were everybody who was in the club were these intelligent people for the most part. And then he got my dad involved, and then a couple of my dad's friends got involved. So it was this, and the knowledge that was there, and it was just really cool to listen to some of them talk and their perspectives. And, we had a pretty big age. We had people who were close to their 60s, and then there was me who was 22.
Yeah.
So we had people with different perspectives. And, at the time, I knew all the hip, cool things that were happening. And, these older people knew, the tried and true way is to do this. So it's oh, okay.
Yeah. I actually think that creates the best groups, though. I even say that in the workplace. I love workplaces where they have older generations, middle of the road, and younger generations, because if you can blend different ideas, I think you actually come out ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because it's just, you get different viewpoints.
Yeah.
So, and it helps open your eyes, and it helps you learn and understand what's going on. So I agree.
Now, does your wife share your passion for finance?
Not as much.
Yeah.
Now she understands everything that's going on, and we have discussions about it, but she's more of okay, you're the accountant. You're so, as I basically tell her we're okay or we're not okay.
Yeah.
And I explain to her why. And then it's just one of those things that, she's more of a creative type. So, in which case I mentioned earlier, so she actually does have a small business. So she actually sells wreaths on Etsy, and it's all her creations. And she actually is a really good she can draw really well. And then she's also a gifted painter. Now she doesn't put any of that stuff out there because she'll tell you she's not good, but I don't know. I look at the stuff and I'm well, I can't do that.
You should put it out there just to see. You never know.
Yeah, I don't. She's good at copying things. It's so. For instance, whoever buys my in-laws' house, she did a mural in their garage, which is a Disney villains mural. So they're gonna. So whenever they go to sell that, someone's gonna come in and they're gonna be like, "Why is Jafar? why is Jafar, you know, Maleficent, or however you say her name, why are they on the wall there? You know, and it's like, it's really good because I've shown people pictures of it and they're like, dude, that's a Disney painting. I'm like, no, that's my wife.
That's
And they're like,
incredible.
yeah. So, but she can't create her own thing. So it's one of those things that, and she doesn't have really the copyright ability to go out and she doesn't have the permission from Disney to do that.
Yeah. Now, has she always had her own business, or is this something that's newer?
No, this is something that she started in 2020. So she actually, so to go into our full story, she worked retail. So she has a horticulture degree, and she just went and worked at a greenhouse, and she was a manager of a greenhouse. And then we had our first child, or our oldest child is 16 years old. And when we had our first child, since she basically worked for a greenhouse, which basically sold, was a retail business.
Yeah.
We calculated out that what she made versus what we were going to have to pay for childcare was going to be pretty close. So at that time, even though, I mean, I've never been like, top 1% of earnings. Yeah. But at that point in time, we figured out that, hey, we were in like we bought a starter home. And it was, again, I learned from my parents. It wasn't something that, the payment on it was not very, I don't even remember what the payment on it was, but it wasn't very much.
Yeah.
And, we figured out that we could live on my salary alone.
Okay.
So that she could stay home with the kids.
Yeah.
So she stayed home and worked part-time. And then, it just so happens, how far are they apart? 16 months later, my second child arrived. So I had a daughter first, son second. And at that point in time, it's like, all right, now we got two kids. So then she basically became a full-time stay-at-home mom. And then, she would work on Saturdays. And then I would have the kids. And then basically there was one day a week where my mom or her mom it was basically my mom would watch the kids like one day a week. So she was basically just working 2 days a week.
Yep.
At this garden center. A few years ago, we decided, like, we kind of like looked at the craze of Etsy and the fact that people are selling wreaths on Etsy. And I was like, you could do that. And she's like, well, I could. And I was like, so I kind of talked her into it, like, saying, all right, like, let's just do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so she was still working part-time at the greenhouse, but she started this business, and I don't know, I would say about 6 months into it, it took off to the point where it was using more of her time up than, she really thought it was going to. And it became a thing where we actually said, all right, well, you can leave you can leave working at the greenhouse and do this full time. So she's now got a full-blown, business, to the point where we're now building an addition to the house in order to basically house all the inventory and give her a workshop and give her some space in order to create her wreaths, in order to basically, and everything's done online. So it's not like it's going to be a store, but it's, so it's just a place for her to keep all her stuff, and it'll, hopefully it can help her expand her business even further by giving her more access to space for inventory and stuff like that.
Perfect. I love it. So how did living on one income affect your finances?
Yeah. So with living on just the one income, so again, I sat down as an accountant and kind of like figured out our budget. And so the strain that put on our budget was, like, if you watch other shows, like the Money Guys in particular, like, you want to put 25% of your income.
They're amazing. I love the Money Guys. We'll just give them a shout out.
I enjoy their content also. It's just like one of those things. But when you make the decision to live off the one income, you have to make some harder decisions where you realize that, hey, I'm still going to be able to put money away, but maybe I'm not going to be able to put away as much as I really want to.
Yeah.
So that basically became what it was that we felt, and also it was one of those things that the betterment of our family.
Yeah.
Nobody cares more about your kids than you do.
Mm-hmm.
So no offense to any of the people that run any kinder cares or any of those places,
Yeah.
but if you have a really caring parent watching the kids,
Mm-hmm.
that basically will help your kids out more than if a stranger's watching them. So it was basically one of those things that I know that paid off for both of my kids, because both of my kids get amazing grades, and my wife used to read to them all the time. And my son, who boys aren't technically known as readers as much as women are, but my son has always been the highest level reader in his class.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's one of those things that was basically given to him from my wife. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and myself. I used to read him 2 books every night also, so it wasn't just my wife, but we used to read to them all the time, so it gave them a head start. And money isn't everything. Yeah. Type of thing. So it's like one of those that being able to pass that off to the two of them, was definitely worth the investment in them. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, you can invest in different ways, and investing in your family is just as important.
Correct. So investing the time in them was definitely, to me, it was definitely worth it. So it paid off. It paid off. Well, it paid off. Let's put it that way.
Well, you got good kids. That's what matters.
Well, I guess that's debatable.
Depends on the day, because they're teenagers.
Yeah, exactly. But no. So it was just one of those things where we maybe put in. I basically invested a lot of money during those years just through a 401k, and I guess I kind of let my Roth investing kind of falter a little bit. Yeah. Which I guess, coming across the shows that I'm coming across now, and looking at oh yeah, I guess I probably shouldn't have put, I should have only put up to the match in the 401k, and then the next whatever percent I should have did Roth, rather than just saying, all right, I'm going to invest 10%. I'm going to invest all 10% into my 401k, because it's just, it's just easy, because it comes right out of your paycheck and you don't see it. Yeah. So I guess those are probably mistakes that I technically made, but at the same point in time, I don't know that I would go back and change anything. I mean, it is what it is.
And I kind of think, sometimes you could say that's a mistake, but it's kind of splitting hairs, because the most important thing is that you were investing, whether it was going into a traditional or a Roth or whatever, or a work funded 401k. I mean, as long as you are investing, that's the gold standard. Picking which account, I think that's more of the fine tuning, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I agree with that, but the accountant in me who used to do taxes would tell me, what the heck were you doing?
Could have had more.
Yeah, you could have had that tax-free, you goofball.
Well, you still have the tax-free money in there, and you can still build it, so you'll have both buckets in retirement.
That's true. So no, that was just, I think those were some hard decisions that we made back then, but at the same point in time, with the cost of childcare, it really made sense for her to stay home. And then and again, it's a lot easier for her. And now with her small business, I got one, one's on the golf team, the other one's playing basketball. Yeah. So it's easy for her to be at home and able to run one to practice. And hey, I'm in whatever club, and the other one's in student government. So it's oh, well, there's a new meeting today. Can you come, so can you come and pick me up? So she has the ability to go get them whenever they need to be picked up. And, we'll send them a bill for the taxi service later in life.
Just itemize everything for the past 16 years.
Yeah, here you go. We've spent this much on you. Can I have it back now?
I don't think that's going to work.
No, I don't think that's going to work either. So, but that goes to the other point is, the only benefit that both my wife and I have both had is that both of our sets of parents believed in education. Mm-hmm. So the nice thing, my parents were able to put money away for me to go to college. They also did that they also paid for my brother's college. I had the agreement that so they paid for B's or better.
Uh-huh.
So if I got a C or anything less, they would charge that back to me.
That's a
so
cool
I had to
rule.
show,
I've never heard anyone say that.
Yeah, so I had to show, so they got to see my college report card because of that, because they're like, yeah, we want to see it. And It's like, all right, okay, all right, you're good. I was like, all right, cool. So that was the agreement I had. I had to pay for 2 classes. I'll admit that. So, so there were 2 bad ones in there, but at the same time, they really helped me out, because it was one of those things that when you graduate college, and college's costs. Because I remember when I went to college, I'll throw a shout out to Penn State University. Penn State University didn't cost nearly what it costs today.
Yeah.
So for even then, it was still good to get out of there without having any debt.
Yeah.
And then one of my other things, and I'm sorry, my best friend and I have a sort of different stories, because he went to an out-of-state college and he's got the debt. But then, when I graduated from college, and I got a job immediately working for a CPA firm, the first thing I did was I needed transportation, so I bought a car. But I bought a used car, and I bought a used car from a family friend that I think we paid like $6,000 for it. So it wasn't, and back then, I guess it would be probably like a $15,000 car now, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it was a nice car. It just was a used car. It had 60,000 miles on it. But my best friend went out and bought a brand new Jetta. And it's like, and he's like, well, he's got student loan debt, but then he goes out and buys a brand new car. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, are you sure you want to do that? So again, it's one of those things that living below your means, those life choices allow you to, invest early. So even though working at the CPA firm, I think I was only making like 28 grand a year. Mm-hmm. I was still putting away, I think I was putting away 10%. And the one of the partners came to me and was like, hey man, I'm really proud of you. I'm like, what for what? What I do? And he's like, no. I was looking at the payroll, and I was looking, you're putting 10% into your 401k. Like that is, he said, you don't understand how important that is. I was like, well, yeah, I've read some stuff, and I think that's very important, because that money is going to be worth a whole heck of a lot a long time from now. He's like, you're right. That's why I'm telling you, I'm proud of you. So I've had encouragers all throughout the process that have kind of guided me on my journey.
And I think that kind of makes a big difference too, because imagine the flip side of that. If you had people around you encouraging you to spend or buy the latest and greatest thing, that could very much change the dynamic.
That's correct. Yeah. So again, in my assets, I basically said that we've put money away for both of my kids. Mm-hmm. So I would like to give them the same benefit that my wife and I had. Yeah. I don't know that I'm going to care as much about, I don't think one of my kids, I don't think is ever going to get a C. So I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about making that stipulation, but yeah, it's one of those things that and that money's in a 529 account. Mm-hmm. And I actually made the decision there that we have the guaranteed savings plan in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So I actually went with the guaranteed savings plan, and it was like a conservative decision because it was one of those that so the GSP, you're paying for the credits at today's dollars. Yeah. And then when they use them, they basically, they get used at today's dollars. So my daughter's first set of credits were bought 16 years ago, which were much cheaper than what they're going to be
than today's. Yeah.
Than today's. So it's one of those things when she goes to college, she hasn't made up her mind yet. She's actually picked out a couple schools that she likes. One of them is a state school that's not that expensive. And I actually calculated the numbers. I actually have her full entire college paid for if she goes to that school.
That's awesome.
So I would I'd encourage her to go to that.
Yes.
but at the same time, I'm not. It's her decision. She can go wherever she wants. But
I think wherever kids go, they'll have fun. Like, I don't think you have to go to like out of state or anything to have a better experience, you know?
No, yeah, and I agree. It was just funny because the state schools, we have enough invested to cover the state schools. So I was just kind of, hey, if you want to go to any of these state related universities here, I think we have that paid for.
Honestly, I'd be the person to be like, here are your options.
Yeah.
These are the only ones.
I was allowed to go wherever I wanted, so I'm not gonna force it on them. But at the same point in time, I may highly encourage it. Let's put it that way.
That's fair. Probably nicer than I would be. I would be like, well, if you go anywhere else, you have to pay the difference.
Well, I don't know. I haven't figured that like exactly how we're gonna do it yet. So maybe that comes up in conversation. We'll see. It depends.
I think that's kind of a way to show them how much they value it. You know, if they're willing to pay the difference, that door is open. But if they're not willing to, I'd be like, well, this is the door then.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to do with her is I think she knows what she wants to do. I'm not really sure that she 100% knows what she wants to do. I just want to sit down with her and be like, hey, and I really think every school should do this with every kid. Like, hey, you want to be an artist. Yeah. This is what your expected income as an artist is going to be, unless you like hit it out of the park, kid. Yeah. So do you really want to go spend $200,000 on a college when you're going to make $30,000 a year? Or, hey, you're going to be an engineer, and as this type of engineer, you have the potential of probably coming out and make $80,000 a year. So yeah, maybe it makes sense to spend a little more on a better engineering school than not. But so I once she kind of picks her final lane, I'm going to sit down with her and be like, all right, well, here's what you can probably expect to earn based off of, this choice. Yeah. And then, here's what your expected income is going to be. So how much do you really want to spend in college type of thing? I
love that. I wish all colleges did that. I wish high schools did that. That's invaluable, because people need to not go $80,000 into debt for something that pays $40,000 a year,
Correct. Because, you have to pay back the loan, you have to pay back, you still have to eat, you still have to find a place to live. So all those things cost money. So how do you balance it all? So, yeah. So, and I agree. I've been a big proponent. I've actually talked to the local high school here. I actually offered them a few years ago that I would come in and teach a finance class. Yeah. Just a basic finance class to kids, just so that, if they were, wanted to learn, even basic stuff like writing a check, balancing a checkbook.
Did they take you up on it?
The gentleman who was like, well, what are you trying to sell him? I'm like, no, I'm not trying to sell him anything. I'm not trying to sell him anything. I was just trying to give them a basic, well, we have a class. So I was like, yeah, but it's not required. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't take that class doesn't really get this. Well, we've got a business club. You can work with that. Well, but the business club kids already know that.
And they probably 20 kids, it's better to get all 100 or 200, whatever the class is,
Right. So it was one of those things that, and again, it would probably just have been an optional thing for after school, come in for an hour and just say, hey, look, but I don't know. They kind of were, they thought I was trying to do something. I'm like, look, I work for, a local company that, just basically we donate so much other stuff to your school. I was just going to donate some of my time and teach. And they're like, no. And I was like, all right, whatever.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry. I wish they would have taken you up. I think many kids would have benefited from that.
Correct. So So it's just, I think that's one of the problems with the U.S. though, is that not many people get that education. So they just don't know.
100%. I agree with that. If there could just be a class that every high schooler had to take, or even in middle school, start introducing it, I think people's finances would be
so much better.
Different. I mean, of course, you'd still have people who do credit card debt or whatever, because people are going to go on their own journey. But I don't know, could help a lot of people.
You're correct. So, that's the most part my story. So,
well, how do you think about money? What are the lessons you've tried to pass on to your kids? What are the important lessons?
The biggest thing I've tried to teach both of them is just about compounding and just about time. And it I mean, and I said living below your means earlier. Like we do, I mean, we've gone to Disney World. We've done, like this year we actually, my son is, again, he races go-karts. So he's like, an adrenaline junkie. So like this year we bought the Cedar Fair passes and we went to King's Dominion and Dorney Park and Cedar Point. And, so like we do stuff, but like we don't do anything like extravagant here that, like I don't try and keep up with the Joneses. It's actually, it's kind of funny. I say I stole my car, but I worked at for a little while there, I was a controller at a car dealership, and it was the owner. I helped the owner try and sell the dealership. He was going to sell the dealership, and I bought a used car from him, which I used to kind of make fun of people who drove like luxury cars, because I was like, why waste money on a car? Because like all you needed to do is get from point A to point B. As long as it's comfortable, as long as it does that, that's good enough for me. But now I drive an Infinity, so I guess I make fun of myself. But again, like I got a really good deal on the car because he was selling the dealership. He was going to have to sell the car to the other guy anyway because he had a non-compete agreement. So I got the car for a really good deal. And I'm a person like, I'm a little tired at the moment because for some reason something on my car broke last night that made no sense to me, and the guy who came with the tow truck didn't understand it either. So I was up until 2:00 in the morning waiting for it to be towed away. But at the same point in time, like I drive a car till it dies. So like it's a 2014. And I got it in 2015, and I'm hopefully going to be driving it in 2025.
I still have my first car. I'm still driving it.
Right. So it's one of those things that I look at other people who buy new cars all the time, and I'm like, why? What? Like what? Okay, whatever. So it's really just passing off the, live below your means, which allows you the ability to invest and invest early and invest often and invest forever. And then at this, by the time you get to in your 50s and 60s, you'll hopefully have enough set aside that you can do what you want when you want.
Yeah. I love that. That's how I think of it too. And honestly, investing is like my favorite part of personal finance. So I love that.
Yeah, no, I love, again, so like the investment club that put like so I do have some play money that I go out and I try and find companies that have like innovative things that, should take off, and eventually, I'll call them like lottery tickets almost. They're not like, I don't buy bad companies. Like my favorite one at the moment is that little medical device company, but they have no debt. So it's like, they can't go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Like they have no debt. It's just, they've got to figure out how to sell their device.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I love the investing part of it from that. But at the same point in time, a lot of my money is just set aside in my retirement accounts or just in, Vanguard mutual or ETFs. So like they're in fairly, I mean, nothing's truly 100% safe, but they're fairly safe investments from the standpoint of they shouldn't have as much volatility as say a little stock that goes from 2 to 10 back to 2. Yes.
When you buy the whole market, you get a little bit of a buffer.
That's correct. So no, and then the only other thing is I had an econ professor at Penn State who did a thing that doesn't make full sense. But he started his class by drawing a $sign on the board and then put a 1. And then he asked, he's like, and he was an Italian guy. He's like, hey, what is this? And we're like, it's $1. And he's like, but what if I told you this $1? He said, well, what can you get for $1? And, we're like, I don't know, like whatever. He's like, oh, you can get a slice of pizza. You can get a soda. You can get whatever. And we're like, yeah, you can. And then he basically sat there and said, well, what if I tell you this $1 can be $1 million? And we're like, no, it's just $1. But the moral of his story was, he said, like, if you put $1 away every day from your 18th birthday to your 65th birthday, when you go to the bank on your 65th birthday, now this is what most people say is this is impossible, which it's not impossible, but it's not likely. He said if you could get a 13, I forget what the return is. I think it's 13.9. I'm sure people in the comments will calculate it out. I think it's a 13.9% return. If you put the dollar away from your 18th birthday to your 65th birthday, on your 65th birthday, when you put the dollar in, it'll be worth $1 million. And we kind of questioned him. We were like, that's a really good return. But then he's like, yeah, but Microsoft's return over the past 10 years as well is 5 times that. So he threw out like 7 or 8 examples, and I don't remember all of them. Yeah. Where the return was well more than 13%. And we had to go back and calculate what the returns were if you did the dollar on all of these investments. And some of them, like some of them was worth like $20 million. And we're like, oh, I guess you can do that. So, but yeah, that was the other thing that helped me realize like the power of compounding. Yeah. And I've told that story enough that my son rolls his eyes when I tell it to somebody, because he's like, oh,
here we go again.
not the Italian econ professor again with the pizza and calling everybody paisans. Oh, geez. So
well, I like the example. I definitely think you should use a lesser return rate, because I mean, if we could get 14, that would be great. I just don't I would bank on it.
I know. I think he was just trying. I think he was trying to show the power of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And how little you really need in order to get there.
Absolutely.
So it was a thing that one of my classmates and we created something. It's actually funny because we created it in Excel, and I actually still have it. Where we thought that if you get to like 2.5 million as the number, if you can like get an 8% return on 2.5 million, you can basically spend $100,000 every year for the rest of your life, adjusted for inflation. But we use 3%, which may or may not be right based off of the current situation. Yeah. But if it were to be 3%, you would never run out of money. Like your spending would never catch what you have invested. Yeah. And then that would allow you to basically, when you leave this earth, you would be able to pass on a healthy amount of money to either your family or to charities or to whatever you want it to be. And then, so like that is, I joke that that's my goal. Like I joke that 2.5 million is my goal based off of that. If you do the math on it from where I'm at now, I can get pretty close. So we'll see. You never know. Yeah. But yeah, so no, that's pretty much what I would impart on my kids, and I tell anybody who will listen to me, talk about compounding and living below your means and doing it when you're young. It really does that. It really does add up.
Yeah. I mean, starting young, that's the best thing you can do. Makes it easier.
And at the same point in time, today we have people like you, and we have people like the Money Guy Show, and you have these other people. Now, there's some bad people out there too, but there's a lot of people that are out there that if you take the time and you're interested in the topic, we can come learn from people like your show and other shows about money, and hopefully we get enough young people interested in it that they go and they do it, because it's always disheartening. Because I always used to read the articles about, hey, like the average 401k for this age group is this. And you would read about that age group that's like 55 to 65. And it's like, oh, well, their median 401k balance is $70,000. And I'd be like, and how do you retire on that?
Yeah, that's not going to pay for your retirement.
Like, I hope all of those people have pensions. Yeah. Because otherwise they're going to be working for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
So I think learning about it early is a huge thing.
Yeah. So I agree with that. Well, I want to thank you.
No, thank you. These are awesome. I'm happy to be a part of it, and thanks for doing them.
I genuinely mean it when I say that these open money videos are my favorite videos. I feel like I get so much out of them, hearing how real people handle their finances. If you guys want to be part of it, all you have to do is send me an email at erintalksmoney@gmail.com. We can talk about your perspective, your journey, your net worth, your income, you name it, we can talk about it. All you have to do is send me an email and we'll get it set up. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I hope you have a great day. Bye.